on the bottom of the doors. You just can't do that with black because black just absorbs too much light. And white, conversely, is too bright.
True.
So silver is a nice kind of a shade because it's not really a color, it's more of a hue.
Yeah.
And it really serves quite well to accentuate kind of the lines of the vehicle. So.
Well, you make an excellent point. So this really does show the lines, and that's kind of what popped out: the clarity, the crispness of the design. You see a lot of the elements in there as far as where everything is, and it's really a sharp looking car.
I think so. The Model 3 really shows itself as being a mix of Model S, Model X. There's a little bit of Roadster, a little bit of Porsche in there too. I think they've done an excellent job of really tying kind of all these elements together and offering something that's very distinctively, Tesla.
Well, moving on, there's been some news about some leaks that have come out about the inverters that Tesla's going to use in the Model 3s, talking about 300 kilowatt plus inverters architecture. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Explain so this article, this article came from Electric. In Tesla's quest to reduce the cost of the vehicle, they've had to literally clean sheet everything, start over from scratch. And in this case, the drive inverter, which is the part that converts the DC energy from the battery pack into AC that's required for the motor. It's an inverter, there's a bunch of chips and so on and so forth. They were able to reduce the part count by anecdotally about 25%. And because the parts are newer, they can get more energy out of that. So now I think, if I remember correctly, the Model S is 250 kilowatt hour. And the new one's coming in at 300 kilowatt hour. So all things considered, given battery packs that are hopefully about the same amount of energy, all things being equal, we should see some serious performance numbers out of the Model 3 that will rival a Model S.
I was going to say, and that's what this article highlights as well, is that because of this type of architecture and technology that they're using, you will see equivalent, if not even better, performance numbers in a car that's small.
Tesla's not one to hold back as far as performance is concerned. Just because it's a cheaper car doesn't mean that it has to be necessarily slower.
So for our viewers in the U.S., this story is for you. We came across a story that Tesla's in talks with a gas station chain to expand their charging network using their facilities. And it's something in the Mid-Atlantic region across 6 states. It's the Sheetz chain. I don't know what outlets they operate. That's the name of the company, so you guys can Google it. Sheetz, S-H-E-E-T-Z, or Z for our American folks. But basically, they're in negotiations putting Tesla charging stations, a cooperative agreement in their gas station elements, and that could, of course, increase a lot of the both destination and superchargers that we see out there.
Yeah, every little bit helps.
Absolutely. So. Again, more expansion coming up beyond just Tesla doing it themselves and building, buying their own facilities and doing it all themselves. I think partnerships is the way to go, and we'll talk a little bit more about that from Ontario and Canada near the end of the show.
Sure.
Also, Tesla's expanding, as we mentioned, in Asia, so they're setting up shop in South Korea and Taiwan. And I think in South Korea, it's going to be a sales and service center. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing any R&D or any creativity stuff out there.
That hasn't been confirmed, but it's definitely at this point it's at the retail level.
Yep. Okay. And that'll be in Seoul, South Korea, as they expand. And then in Taiwan, they're going to open a service center as well. Right now, they're just going to start with a pop-up store. So for our viewers around the globe, and by the way, we do have feedback from people all around the world. So it's amazing to get this feedback, and thank you very much for everybody who watches. So it's great to see Tesla implementing their plan as far as the expansion goes, and able to support the Model 3 later on.
Cool.
Of course, there's a recent story that just came out about, as of just a couple days ago, about Tesla offering a cheaper Model X version. So we did that nice piece on John Dixon's signature series Model X, which is not the cheapest version of the Model X, I may add.
Oh, no.
It's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
But apparently they've seen the value in offering a little bit more of a streamlined version of the Model X. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, what they really did is similar to what they recently did with the Model S, is basically offer a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is still in fact a 75, which is software unlockable.
Which we talked about on a previous show.
Yeah, exactly. So all that does is just really brings down the cost of entry on the Model X to a more reasonable level. It's it is what it is. It's still an expensive vehicle.
It's going to be expensive, and I think the entry price is something around $75,000 US, from what I understand.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's still anecdotally about $5,000 more equivalent from a Model S. It's about $5,000 more of the same configuration.
But that'll give you 200 miles of driving range, 130 miles an hour top speed. I don't know where you can do that in North America, but maybe the middle of nowhere, Arizona or something, where there's a flat road, you can open it up, and 0 to 60 of 6 seconds. So still a lot of oomph.
Very respectable.
Sure. Absolutely. Deliveries for late September. So we hope that you don't decide to not take your Model 3 and get something else. But if you do, this could be a great option for you.
Sure.
Now you mentioned the batteries. As far as the battery technologies, there was a story about Panasonic pushing up the Gigafactory timetable to ramp up production. Have you had a look at that, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah,
I
don't think there's any coincidence here that the Gigafactory grand opening is on July 29th at the end of this month.
Gee,
and
that's true.
Tesla has, and Tesla.
We don't have an invite, by the way.
No, Tesla and Panasonic both have a cutoff date of having at least the initial equipment for making cells at the factory on July 20th.
Oh, okay.
So I think the folks that are going to be at the event are going to be in for possibly a pretty good treat of being able to see these cells starting to be made at the Gigafactory.
And these are the shorter, wider cells that we talked about.
Well, the initial
before,
cells that are supposed to be made at the Gigafactory are the cells for the Model 3,
okay,
which is the 2700 form factor.
So a little different than our prop.
Well, for those of you who remember here, we've talked about this before. The 18650 battery cell, 18 millimeters, 65 millimeters tall, is what's used in the Model S and the Model X. Tesla's going to be making a new cell, slightly larger, 20 millimeters by 70 millimeters, for the Model 3. And that will be the initial cell production at the Gigafactory. It's for the Model 3. Eventually, it may make the 18650, or they may change the battery packs in the Model S and the Model X later on to accommodate a larger cell. We don't know. It's just speculation at this point.
And I guess the last takeaway on this story is that they're ramping up production, and that they should have that power production started, or that ramped up production starting in the beginning of November. They're investing $1.6 billion in this venture, so it's not chump change. And that's all good for us, because if we want Elon or we want Tesla to meet those initial shipping dates of later 2017, so all the steps that they need to take to get there, we want to see them happening. And this looks like it's
critically important that the Gigafactory start producing cells, ostensibly to make sure that the quality is there.
Yep.
And of course, they're going to need a stockpile, of course.
Absolutely.
So they need to start moving now, so that the timetables all kind of dovetail together for next year.
Absolutely. So one other story that we're following, but we don't really have anything to update to you today on, we were hoping to get something out, is the story about Elon hoping to release his top secret Tesla master plan part 2 this week. Today is Thursday as we're taping this, and we haven't seen anything out yet. Do you have any summaries of what you think that might is? Any idea?
The only thing that's coming off the top of my head is really his furtherance to his intent to absorb Solar City. Exactly. I think really it's probably going to... I think probably the major push is about Tesla Energy, which is the push into renewable energy production with the solar panels, with Solar City, as well as pushing more of the energy storage with with the Powerwall and the Power Pack, and potentially some other news as far as the rest of the vehicle fleet, as far as what they're going to do is maybe some ride sharing or something like that. But I think most of it's really about Tesla Energy. The timing is not a coincidence. As far as their bid to look at absorbing Solar City, I think it's all kind of...
Which they're getting a lot of flack for, that we're seeing anyway. But
well, from a product standpoint...
You got to look at the big picture, though, right?
Yeah, I think from a product standpoint, absorbing Solar City is a good move. Financially, I'm not 100% convinced of. I think Tesla has enough on their plate right now, trying to get the Model 3 into production and trying to get all that stuff done.
Yep.
And I think, Wall Street has certainly looked at that, saying, from a financial aspect, it's probably not good timing.
Right.
From a product perspective, again, I think it makes perfect sense. Elon has since tweeted that he really wants to offer an end-to-end solution as far as storage of the energy, beautiful solar panels so they don't look ugly on a home, and offering, a vehicle to go along with it. So, it makes sense from that standpoint. Financially, well, we'll see. It's not an outright purchase in terms of cash exchange, and it's a share per share exchange.
Right.
So it's no
and the
money.
board has not approved it yet.
No, it has to be ratified by the board. So we'll see. We don't have any timeline as far as when that's going to happen and stuff, but we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens out of that.
Absolutely. So there you go. Another story that we came across that somebody had published, and we've had this question asked of us in prior mailbag or prior email that we've got from viewers, as far as figuring out what the fuel savings and the ROI is on purchasing an electric vehicle, or specifically a Model 3 in this case. And I know that you, I think you put up some links on the forum to a calculator that you have, that somebody could input their information and actually get more concrete data.
I'll put a link to the
If you haven't
spreadsheet.
already, yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes to this calculator, and I'm not the author of this calculator. It was pulled from the Tesla forums by an author, and I don't have his name, and I apologize. It's extremely comprehensive. It's not
Very
the easiest.
much.
It's not the easiest thing to use because you need to know some numbers, but it does a lot of conversions, so it's quite interesting. I'll put a link. You can play with it if you see. There's not enough time to really go through it today, but I think it will really help some users who are really sitting potentially on the fence, trying to determine, well, is the next car, I mean, is it really worthwhile with the gas savings and stuff? Look, at the end of the day, because of the efficiencies of electric motors as opposed to gasoline engines, I mean, your fuel, as far as the electricity, is always going to be cheaper. Always going to be cheaper. And it's only going to get better as the EVs come down in price. Model 3 is just the first step to getting to a mass market car. It's not the end game. It's end game for part one of Tesla's master plan. But as the technology gets cheaper and cheaper, EVs are going to come onto the market to the point where the drivetrains are going to be equal, if not cheaper, than a gasoline engine. At that point, we have a whole tipping point where the whole industry would just start cascading down that hill. Because when you take into account, the fuel savings costs and the cost of ownership, which is a major calculation that has to be factored in with EVs, then it's game over at that point.
Yeah. Great observations, and I know we've talked briefly about this, I think, on our first show when we talked a little bit about it, but this article talked about, or mentions estimated fuel savings at 30 to 40% when you compare that to the BMW 3 Series, which is what this car is being compared to for that. So the author has worked out different costing as far as what the fuel costs and what battery and what charging costs are for California and other states, and he's blended that. So really, in a nutshell, he's come up with that even taking all that into account, you're still saving at about 30 to 40% just on fuel alone. Never mind, as you said, the total cost of ownership and maintenance, less maintenance, in less moving parts. And then, of course, I think a lot of us, I can speak to myself, I'm looking at electric car because I want to try to do my little part to help from pollution and from carbon footprints and all this kind of stuff that we're more conscious of. So that's one of the reasons. Yes, there's got to be a financial, ROI. There's got to be something there.
Absolutely.
But when we look at your standard ICE car, that we know how much gas is, we know the pollution it emits, the tons of CO2, all this kind of stuff. It really makes sense if you can fit an EV into your lifestyle.
Yeah, I think the fuel cost savings are especially important for countries not necessarily the U.S. because gasoline is fairly inexpensive in the U.S.
Right
now. But in Canada or in Europe and Asia, gasoline prices are considerably higher.
Yeah,
So
we pay a lot more up here.
Yeah, like for me, I'm driving my SUV and it's costing me between, depending on how much mileage I put on the vehicle, anywhere from $3,000 to $3,400 a year in gasoline.
Yeah.
And I've done the math. If I get a Model 3 and I charge only at home, and that's not counting long distance travel that potentially free, not only with the Ontario chargers, but superchargers.
And even if you pay that lump sum fee for the supercharger of $2,000, which could be high.
Yeah, and that's a one-time charge. That's not a repeating charge.
That's right.
That I'm looking at saving of a minimum of $2,500 a year on gasoline. That's significant.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the model is for the longevity for keeping EVs are, but they have a lifespan of what, 8 to 10 years.
Well, it depends on the manufacturer. Tesla's pretty much said that their batteries, they expect to have anywhere from a 10 to 15 year minimum on their battery packs. And again, people always ask, well, how much does it cost to replace a battery pack? At this point, it doesn't matter because when the time comes to actually change the battery pack, the batteries are going to be so much cheaper anyways that you only really have to concern yourself about that in the future.
And more efficient and all the other benefits.
That's one of the nice things about batteries is that they improve over time and they get cheaper.
Absolutely. So, we'll put these pictures up and we'll have links, of course, in our show notes so you can go check out the article and check out all the numbers. But, it's safe to say that you are going to get fuel-saving benefits right out of the gate. Never mind everything else, some of the other things that we talked about and things that for yourself.
Sure.
So great article, and I'm glad somebody had brought that to our attention. Now, we mentioned at the top of the show about for our Canadian viewers, specifically those here in Ontario, which we do have a lot of. Thanks for writing in. Of course, we all know that WIN's government, the provincial government here, has got this big climate action plan rolling out over the next many years to reduce our carbon footprints and to help the climate. Part of that is the quicker adoption of EVs. I know the government wants to see what's currently on the road in Ontario for the number of EVs. They want to see